You staying home tonight?
I hadn't planned on it, no.
Plan on it.
All right. Woo. We're here.
You're here.
Hi, Jenna. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I should call this series people who I've low-key been following on Instagram, but not for extremely long, but then who passed this marker of definitely interesting, definitely someone I want to talk to.
You're very kind.
Yeah.
So I guess I made the cut.
You definitely made the cut. I mean, this is a massive podcast. I don't know if you know, but podcasts are exploding, and we are on the cutting edge.
That's what I've heard. I've heard that you are on the cutting edge, so I'm grateful to be a part of it.
I mean, the guest list is very long. So, for our massive audience and for my mom, who are you? Who are you? What do you do? What's your background?
So my name is Jena, Viviano, and I have a career coaching business. So what I help do is I help people figure out what they want to do with their lives and teach them how to get there.
Yeah.
So I kind of got into it in a really weird way. I used to work on Wall Street. I worked at the New York Stock Exchange. Then I made a massive pivot and worked for a 33-person startup and in sales. And I'd never had a retail job in my life. And so I realized I was pretty good at switching jobs and positioning myself. And then people started asking me for help. And that's kind of how my business started. And so it's evolved over the years. You bet. Yeah. Yeah. Super exciting.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Pittsburgh. Go Steelers.
Oh, nice. I went to college in Steubenville. It's a really small town outside of Pittsburgh.
In Ohio, though.
Yes, I actually manned a Pittsburgh Steelers game. I was on the rugby team, and as a fundraiser, we had to pat people down. We had to play security. And I don't know if you could tell over video, those of you listening at home, I am not someone who can stop an armed, I'm a skinny man. I'm a frail, fragile man.
Steelers fans can get intense. So.
Yes, they get very intense. It was my first. Yes. Do you say yins?
No,
okay.
I don't.
Thank God.
I say y'all, though, and I'm not
fine.
From the South. I'm kind of a hypocrite, but I've just gone with it.
That's fine. I say y'all, and I'm not from the South, but I live in the South now, but yeah, that was my first time meeting someone that said yins. It freaked me out. I told her to repeat herself 4 times. I was like, what?
Oh,
say that again? Okay, so you
very inappropriate.
So you grew up in...
I love Pittsburghers, but that's inappropriate.
Hashtag we love you, Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Pittsburgh. What, do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have a sister. She's awesome. Okay. She's 5 years younger than me. She lives in DC.
Okay.
She's killing it. So, my mom and dad are still the whole family's still in Pittsburgh, though.
Okay. And what was your very first job?
I worked at Annie Ann's.
What is that? Is that
the pretzel shop in the mall? You
Annie
did
Ann's?
The pretzel? Yeah, Annie Ann's pretzel shop. They had sugar-free.
Oh, pretzels. Okay, I thought you said pet shop.
Oh, no.
So
I really didn't like pets growing up.
Dang. So did you have to make pretzels or sell pretzels or anything? You just made them?
It was a very short-lived gig. My parents wanted me to get a job. And so, I guess I could say babysitting was probably my first job, technically. But my first job where I got a paycheck, from an establishment besides my next door neighbor was Annie Ann's. Okay. And so, I don't think I ever stayed long enough to graduate to actually making the pretzels. I think I just did check out because I just didn't stay there long enough. I had play practice. I was in a musical theater and that kind of took over my life. And so I was like, sorry, I gotta quit.
Okay, so then tell me the story going from you're cashing people out, they're buying their pretzels and going to shop at American Eagle, and then now you're on Wall Street. What's the fill in the gap there?
So I went to a school in Eastern Pennsylvania called Lehigh University. It's a small liberal arts school. It's really heavy in engineering. A lot of really smart people go there. Mm-hmm. I was not necessarily one of those people, but the engineers are different level smart. Yeah. And so I was in the business school, and I remember I was going in for actually got an internship to work for an investment bank. But for my interview for that, I remember going into the interview, and it was my first professional interview ever I prepared for. And my friend dressed me, and she put me in this really choking sheath dress that she would wear. And she looked really great in it. I thought I was going to die. I went into my professor's office and I started crying, and she goes, go back up to your house, go get changed, wear something you feel comfortable in, which was wildly inappropriate for an investment banking interview. The guy that was interviewing me happened to be from Pittsburgh. And so we bonded and I got the job. And that was my first internship, was working for an investment bank on Wall Street.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happens? How long were you there?
Didn't stay very long. So I did an internship, and then I had, in the business world and on the East Coast there, I didn't grow up knowing what Wall Street was. I barely even knew what New York City was beyond my musical theater world that I really cared about as a kid.
Yeah.
And all of these, mostly men, really prized for these investment banking jobs. And honestly, I kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
And I remember I got the offer letter to be a full-time analyst before my first day of senior year of college. So I was like cruising my senior year.
Yeah.
And then I started the job and I realized that a full-time job is a lot different than an internship. You are there for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was working 100 hours a week. I was, like 80 to 100 hours a week every week. I didn't have weekends. I was constantly attached to my BlackBerries because we used those then.
Oh, shout out to BlackBerries making a comeback. Yeah.
I had friends come into town and I couldn't actually spend time with them.
Yeah.
Hurricane Sandy happened that time. It was just a
Dang.
terrible, terrible year. So there was about 9 months that I lasted. And I remember I was laying on the bathroom floor on a Saturday morning at the building. I won't tell you what the address is because you could figure out where the employment is. I was laying on the bathroom floor and I just remember being like, God, if you're real, you have got to get me out of here. You have got to get me out of here. And about 2 weeks later, a sorority sister had told me about this job at the New York Stock Exchange. And I went in for the interview. I'm pretty sure I cried during it.
During the interview?
During the interview,
Like you were like, please, like, save me kind of cry? Or was it like, I want this job so bad? Or like...
Yeah, it was, I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
So I had left the office the night before, really late, probably past midnight, and had an interview at 8:00 in the morning. And I didn't prepare. The woman asked me, she's so sweet. She asked me a question that I should have known the answer to that was more technical. And I just turned around and went, I just don't know. I started tearing up. And, but I left that interview. I remember getting my cab ride back home. And, I remember thinking, not back home, back to work, cause I had to go into the office. And I remember thinking to myself, I think I got that job.
Yeah.
Of all the, I just remember having like a very clear piece about it where I was like, I think I got that job.
Yeah.
And fast forward a couple weeks later, I always joke now, one of the gentlemen who actually ended up hiring me, I always tell him that he saved me from investment banking. So that's been the big joke over the years.
Dang.
He saved me from investment banking. I worked at the New York Stock Exchange for 2 years, which is awesome.
Yeah. So tons of experience, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So
lots of experience.
So then you wind up, so how long were you there? And then you wind up at a startup. I want to hear about that. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So I worked at the NYSE for about 2 years and a little bit of change. And while I was there, you see all these entrepreneurs making their companies go from nothing to something. I saw Twitter IPO. So my team would basically go in. I would support the managing directors that would go in and pitch the CEOs and CFOs of companies about to IPO, why they should list their stock on New York versus NASDAQ.
Yeah.
Or NASQUAC, as we used to call them, as a joke behind the scenes. Or maybe I just said that. I don't know. They probably wouldn't appreciate me saying that. I personally said that.
Yeah.
And so I was working there. I seen all these companies go to, IPO. I worked on Alibaba, which was the biggest IPO in the history of the world.
Really? I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I was there during what they call the IPO boom, which was really awesome, great experience. And I just wanted to be a part of the startup scene. I kind of realized I had a really big interest in seeing these companies go public and seeing
You're
how
like, this is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Going public's a pretty good deal.
Also true.
Yeah.
And so I just started searching around for different, the tech scene in New York was just kind of starting to really burgeon, where San Francisco was much more, it was a bigger deal there.
Yeah.
And I happened to stumble across these, the Forbes 30 under 30 list. Mm-hmm. And on that list were two women called Catherine and Alex, and they founded this company called The Muse, which is a career advice site.
The Muse, okay. I think I've heard of this.
Yes, it's very popular.
I need to take notes here.
Yes, take notes. Amazing company, amazing women. And I was actually using their platform to find awesome companies to work for because they actually highlight the culture of an organization. They go in and take videos and photos of what it looks like to work there so that potential employees can really decide, hey, do I actually want to work for this company?
Okay.
And I find that like 95% of people in my practice don't ever leave job functions. They always leave cultures or bosses.
Interesting.
They never really leave just the job function.
Okay. So what were you doing at the Muse? Were you doing like finance related stuff or what was
I was doing sales.
Oh, okay.
That was the big pivot where I had this finance degree, actually applied online, got rejected naturally, because why would they hire somebody for a sales job who literally doesn't have any sales experience?
Yeah.
Typical inside sales experience.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with somebody that I worked with at the New York Stock Exchange, and I was just telling her I was feeling so frustrated about the whole process. I had interviews at all these places, but nothing felt right. And she goes, "Why don't you apply to Muse?" I went, "Oh, I already applied." And she goes, "Let me see if I can get your resume in someone's hands." So a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend got my resume in front of the CEO.
Nice.
And they brought me in. And they ended up hiring me. So I worked there for about 2 years. I worked in the sales function for about 1, and then I launched the sales training program there, simultaneously while launching my career coaching side hustle.
Yeah. Okay. So at the same time, so you're kind of overlapping this, side project of helping people one-on-one while you're doing. I think that's really smart.
Yes. If I could give any advice to somebody trying to launch their own thing, do it on the side first. Figure out how to make money.
Yeah.
Because the transition of doing it full time was, everyone's like, "Oh, that must have been so stressful." It really wasn't. That sounds really bratty to say.
Yeah.
Because I think the answer people want to hear is, "Oh, it was so hard. It was really challenging. Prepare yourself." It wasn't, because I had prepared myself for 2 years of really understanding my business, understanding what I could offer. And it's obviously evolved and changed as you work on it full time, but I knew how to make money.
Yeah. You had that platform and you were ready to kind of jump over. Well, cool. Yeah. So you worked there for 2 years and then you just went full time into coaching.
Went full time into coaching.
And so give me your pitch. Like, what is it specifically that you help? I mean, it's not all the way back to what do you wear? I mean, there is a little bit I think I saw of what do you wear, but it's not, but what is it specifically that you love helping people with?
I love helping mid to senior level professionals. So those people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, figure out what their personal career brand is in order to pitch themselves more effectively in the job market process. So it is really competitive out there. There's a ton of jobs. It's oversaturated. Resumes are getting completely thrown to the side because of these softwares. You have to have a personal brand in order to showcase who you are and what value you bring to the table. So it's almost treating every candidate as if they're their own business. Yeah. And they need to showcase what their value proposition is. Yeah. And a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, I love this phrase that you have here, this personal career brand. Yeah. It's because I think a lot of people might think of a personal brand and they're like, well, I don't want to just take pictures of my butt on Instagram. I want to, I want to work as an investment banker or something like that. Why would I build up some type of brand is a very strange thing. So explain a little bit what you mean by personal career brand. Cause I feel like this is a very 2018 idea.
The buzzword.
Yeah. Well, not in a bad way, but I think that is this is exactly the kind of stuff. I worked as a high school youth minister for a long time. And, a lot of the kids would come to me and ask me, career advice and obviously I'm doing all of this crap. So I am kind of pro building some type of platform or writing on something and trying things out and tasting things. And so anyways, explain what you mean by personal career brand.
So I think a personal career brand, everyone has one, whether they realize it or not. Yeah. It's just a matter of if you're cultivating it or not. So everyone, it's the same thing as what's your reputation? What are you known for? What do people associate you with? So there's kind of 4 different people that really need a career brand. Everybody needs one, but who really focus, you can fit yourself in one of these 4 buckets. You're either a job seeker, you're looking for a job. You are at any age, really. You can be young or you can be old. I actually recommend it for all ages. They need to be building it. So that's the second bucket. So everyone fits into that. Someone who wants to get a promotion internally into their organization. And then finally, the last piece is who wants to be a thought leader. So that could look if you're trying to start your own side hustle, if you're trying to be considered an expert in your field beyond just your where you work. Yeah. Or you can be an expert in something else that you're trying to pivot yourself into.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So what I'm thinking about, and I'm thinking about people listening to this or just the people, the people that I talk to a lot, I'm thinking about college kids going out into the workforce or kids that are in college that are thinking about that coming up, resumes and stuff coming up. I mean, especially it's November, when I was in college, this is a time where I'm thinking about, all right, what's my exit strategy into the world? Yeah. So what would be kind of maybe 1 or 2 things that you would say people start with, especially if they have nothing. They have no website. They have no, maybe they're not even sure what career to go into. They just have an idea like finance or economics or, what in 2018, 2019 would you recommend people start with, especially college students?
I think just having a LinkedIn profile that's up present and you have a picture on it. It doesn't have to have a ton of experience.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn, 95% of recruiters are on LinkedIn. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And the second thing as a college student, clean up the rest of your profiles.
Yeah.
So clean up your Facebook, clean up your Instagram. I don't want to see you out drinking and doing all that stuff that's on a public profile.
Yeah.
Either keep it private or don't post it at all.
Okay, so this is what I was like the most interested in getting your take on, because I go back and forth in my head a lot about this kind of stuff. How important is, like, how curated, how squeaky clean should our profiles be, you know?
I think it goes back to the initial question of what do you want your reputation to be? So if you're okay with your reputation being that you go out every pictures of you drinking, then that's probably the reputation that you're going to have leading with you, right? It just depends on, the curation really just should be an outpouring of who you are. It shouldn't be necessarily massively curated unless you're a business owner or something like that. That's an exception to the rule. But if you're using your platforms to build out your personal brand, it should always reflect who you are internally. And if who you are internally is not actually going out every single night, that's what you are showcasing to the world. And so you just want to make sure that you monitor that more effectively. I don't think it's a matter of yes, all no. I have some pictures of me drinking a glass of wine because that's part of who I am.
Well, it seems like there's two ends of the spectrum. There are some I have some friends that are like, I don't put anything online because I don't want anyone to see anything, which in some ways that's kind of bad because you're missing out on an opportunity to like you said, position yourself as a thought leader in an area, or at least show some of your work. Like here's
or
work.
Even network with people. Honestly, the social media sites, if you use them for their true intention is to connect with people offline. Like you connect with them online and then connect with them offline, right? And so we connected online, and now we're kind of still online, but it's in a more one-on-one type of situation, right? So it's the same thing if you're on LinkedIn. I've met my best friend and roommate on Instagram.
Dang.
Crazy story there. That's a longer story, but I met her on Instagram.
Dang.
And I met a boyfriend on LinkedIn and like all these different things. And so I think it's more about the connections that you could make. I don't agree with necessarily being completely offline because you're missing so much information, but I think tempering that is important.
Okay, LinkedIn. What about a website? I have a tendency to push people towards creating some type of website. How do you feel? I mean, do you feel like that's important for college kids? I see a lot of graphic design students going that route because it's like, here's my portfolio. It would be really interesting to see people in markets or careers that don't traditionally have a website, making a website like a resume or something like that. I mean, what's your take on that?
I think it's interesting. I actually don't do it for a lot of my clients because I don't see the immediate gratification of that necessarily. I think it's a more of a long-term play. If you're trying to build a platform or like what you're talking about is relevant to your career, I think that's totally appropriate. But you're right. Graphic designers, I absolutely recommend it. If you're in any type of creative field, you need to have a website. If you're not in a creative field, LinkedIn kind of serves as a website. Honestly, like I tell my clients, write content on LinkedIn, write articles, and it's basically the same thing as having a blog. Yeah,
man, I have to be honest. I have not gotten back into LinkedIn in a long. Like I've heard Gary Vaynerchuk and some other people talking about it. I'm like, LinkedIn, man, I have not even typed
all of my clients.
I know I've not typed in LinkedIn, and it must have it's changed a lot since like I've last logged in. So LinkedIn's pretty powerful.
It's a pretty powerful tool, and especially if you're trying the way that I don't know how all the algorithms work, but all I do know is that the more people you're connected with, you post something, someone likes it, their whole feed sees it, and so the reach gets really fast, gets really large, really fast. That's how I've blown up my business through LinkedIn this past year. Granted, I'm targeting the people that are directly on LinkedIn. They're often looking for a job. But there's a lot of people that the people who really know how to use LinkedIn really well are recruiters and salespeople.
Okay.
And so if the recruiters are on the website and they know how to quote unquote use it, I still have some questions if they actually know how to use it well or not. But if they are the people that actually know it really well, you need to be on it if you're trying to find a job or you're trying to build your personal brand or trying to network with people. Networking is really what it's most valuable for, in my opinion. Okay, so let's sidestep. Like, let's forget about college students. Forget you, college students. What about you said you were building your business on there, something like this, like a podcast or like
a personal brand that's not targeted towards people trying to find a job? Would you say that small business owners or creatives should be using LinkedIn?
So creatives, it depends on who it all depends on who your audience is.
Yeah.
So if you're small, you have to, with every small business, whether you might be a small business servicing certain types of professionals, and that actually might be on your LinkedIn. But if you're a small business owner and you're only serving people locally, there are ways to do it. I've had real estate agents reach out to me on LinkedIn, which is an interesting tactic. They went about it totally wrong.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting way to also go about it. So I've seen different types of businesses, not just like myself, who is a career coach, speaking to people, but other people as well that utilize it and have gotten leads from it.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So back to social media. And not back to, we're talking about all of that, but back to curating your presence online. There's something that came up in ministry. There was a mom whose daughter was caught up in a 3-second video on Snapchat where she was in the background and it went viral, and they were singing some song or something, and it had the N-word. It was like 3 seconds of the N-word, and it was just and it looked pretty bad. I mean, it's just a sea of blonde white girls, right?
Oh man, I think I heard about this actually.
Oh really? Yeah, and it went pretty viral, here, and the mom was just devastated, and felt like, my daughter's never getting into college. She's never going to get a job. This is everywhere. Now, granted, as someone who tries to get attention constantly, like, let me just rephrase. As someone who's trying to get attention I feel like I was about to say, as someone who's constantly seeking attention, as someone who's trying to get people to look at stuff that I make online, she was like 3,000 views. And I was like, well, 3,000 views is not, that's a lot.
Yeah, right.
It's not the end of the world. It could have been way worse. But what is as we get more and more cameras around us and more things recording every second of our lives, is a kid going into college, like, are they ruined by something like that, or what do you even do if you're in college and something ends up going online? It really sucks if you have no social media presence, because then they type in your name and that's the only thing that comes up, right? Like,
I don't know. I think I'd go back and forth on that.
Yeah.
I think it's just, if it's already happened to you, like, there's grace for that, I think that's my first reaction to that in the first place, but try not to put yourself in situations where that's going to happen.
I know, right? I know.
I don't know. And I think generally as a generation, we, and me, myself included, have a problem with oversharing everything. And it's going to come back to bite us in the butt. And the younger generation past them are going to, I think it's going to be a swing the other way.
Yeah.
Just because it's not sustainable. It's literally like we are recording, we're on the Truman Show.
Yeah.
Except we're doing it to ourselves.
But do you think that we will reach a point where we'll start treating online, treating people's personal brands or whatever, like, we'll give them more leeway publicly by saying, hey, like, this post from 10 years ago was this way, you've changed since then, right? Like, a lot of times, especially when I talk to people who are just starting writing online, they're really nervous about getting the article exactly right. Like here's my opinion, and I want to make sure that I can stand behind this for the rest of my life. I'm like, well, you're going to change, I don't know. And I don't know if you have some advice for people that feel that way, that feel so paralyzed by what they put out of themselves that they have to constantly be the same for all eternity.
Yeah. My first blog was called Giant in Heels. So
wait. Why was it Giant in Heels? Are you like 7 foot tall?
I'm 5'9". My sister would say you're 5'9.5". I'm 5'10", and I always wear heels, and so I would be taller than all the boys all the time.
Okay, well, that's not that tall.
No, it doesn't seem like that tall. But then when you wear like 3 or 4 inch heels, you're like 6 foot.
That's true.
And so I would always be the person that was. So I call myself Giant in Heels. So those first pieces of content were not good, but I just kept putting them out there, and I got better, and I got better, and I got better, and so. I think that we will have grace for that in the future. I don't think we're there right now.
No, heck no.
I mean, you just look at politics alone. Like,
Yeah.
I think about that. I've talked to my best friend about that. Him and I have just chatted like, our generation is screwed.
Yeah, it's
because
rough.
everything is out there that we've ever done.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's like, that is paralyzing to think about. We're going to be the first generation that our kids are going to be able to see how we grew up from
exactly.
I was in high school when Facebook came out, and they're going to see my high school years all the way through.
I think about that all the time. I used to flip through, like, whenever I got bored, I used to flip through little photo albums and see things. And I'm like, my kids are just going to scroll through my photos, you know, like they're just going to scroll through Facebook photos. Like that's going to be the new way of looking back on your parents' life.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. I mean, I'm sure we're going to listen back to this and be like, how did they think that's weird? But
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So I don't really have any wise words for that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just to try and be smart.
Yeah.
And try not to put yourself in situations where that's going to be a thing. And I understand the girl was in the background. I don't think she's ruined for life.
Yeah.
I don't think that people make mistakes, and just unfortunately we're having a lot of our life documented, and that with those mistakes become public pretty fast. Yeah,
I remember, one of the things I said was, man, you know, most of the parents that are really mad about this, if there were phones back around when they were 16, they'd probably really regret some things that were recorded too, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. My grandmother's generation, all of them, they would all regret it. And so I hope that there will be grace for some of that in the future.
So where does you have in your Instagram profile the intersection of, I think, faith and work? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Jesus and work.
Jesus and work. There you go. Jesus. So what has your like relationship with God been like? And then how does that, how does that relate to what you do?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Presbyterian home. We grew up going to church, and but I wasn't really walking with the Lord for, I would say, a large portion of my later teens, early 20s. And where the rubber really hit the road was in that investment banking job, where I was just a fraction of myself. I was doing all the things you shouldn't be doing. Yeah. And I remember laying on the floor and saying, God, if you're real, you need to like save me from this. Wow. And so 2 weeks later, I had that job opportunity. And it was actually at the New York Stock Exchange where I would say that that's where the transformation happened. And I became a follower of Jesus. Really? Wow. I had a colleague of mine who worked there, and he knew I was interested in church. I kind of always threw the word out there and like just kind of threw it out there that I was like interested in going to church. Yeah. And he asked me if I wanted to go on this retreat that a big, huge group of his friends were going on. And it was a Christian retreat. And I went, I'm not going on that. There's no way I'm going on that. And I don't know anybody. Like, I'm not going. This sounds really weird. Yeah. And he finally just kept on pressing. And I finally was like, fine, I will go. I will go. I will pay money to go to this thing I don't want to go to.
It is such a weird thing if you think about it. Like, I'm going to pay money to go overnight and stay somewhere where they're just going to talk to me about stuff. And I just have to sit there and listen. Yes. Yeah.
But that's where I had made friends that were believers that were my age, that I met my mentor on that trip. And it was that process that I started like the healing process of a lot of stuff that had gone on in my life. Dang. And so for me, that's really the catalyst where I firmly believe that if more people brought Jesus into the workplace and actually stopped leaving him at the parking lot at 9 a.m. and picking him up at 5 p.m. If they integrated more of their faith at work, it would have a ripple effect. More people would come to know the Lord. They would be saved. You would have a positive ripple effect on the economy, like all these different things I firmly believe. And we have, I go to an evangelical church, and we talk a lot about marriage, and we talk a lot about relationships, and that's wonderful and important. But we spend a third of our life at work, and there are very few sermons on work and faith integration. Man,
that is such a good point. I saw, so I work at a church, and so I'm constantly looking for like different resources and stuff. And I saw somewhere, so I mean, I just want to say this isn't, I'm not taking credit for this, but there was this phrase like "made for Mondays" as like a sermon series. Oh, like we're made for Mondays. Like we go to church on Sundays, but we're made to go to Monday, and like that's our place. That's our place to like to work and to be a witness and to just love the person in the cubicle next to you, Yeah.
Just love people.
Did you froze it?
Yeah, it's such a like. Oh, do you hear me now?
And we're back. All right, thanks. That was a message from our sponsor, and now we're back. I guess we froze for a second.
So yeah, I think that just generally speaking, that we just separate so much of that life because we don't know how to approach it, right? We don't know how do you bring up faith in the workplace? We're so politically charged now.
Yeah.
You're going to offend somebody. It's inappropriate. And I just have taken this stance of coming to work as a whole person.
Yeah.
And what happens at home translates into the office, and what happens in the office translates at home.
Yeah.
And that's what I really firmly believe to be true. When I worked at the startup, actually, they interviewed me, and one of the questions they asked was like, what is really important to you? And I had been pretty far along in my, I'd been going to a church and had mentorship and like was really diving into my faith. And I said, honestly, going to church is what I do every Sunday, which in New York is like, no one does that.
Really? Are there a lot of evangelical churches in New York?
There's a couple.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the great thing about New York is they're very open to listen to all types of things.
Yeah.
But and if you're a believer, you don't have to be. So if you say that I'm a Christian and I'm going to church, you really mean I'm a Christian and I'm going to church and I believe in Jesus and I'm making this a part of my life.
Yeah.
So I did love that. I didn't like New York for a lot of reasons, but I loved New York for that reason alone. And it was kind of like baptism by fire, jumping in the deep end and being like, what do I think about this God, Jesus thing? And so, that was really, really just very impactful for me.
I'm always really interested in people when they have like a big pivot in their life or a turn in their life, how they would describe their relationship with God beforehand, because you came from a Christian background, like your parents were Christian, and my parents were Christian too. Well, my parents were Catholic, and then they like I had, even though I was raised Catholic, I had a very very intense like turn, and so I'm just interested in what your relationship with God was like before, and then how you describe your relationship with Him now, if that makes sense.
That's a really great question.
I'm not trying to stump you or anything. I'm just
I think it's a good question. I've thought about this before. I would say it was stale. It was like shallow.
Yeah.
Like I had a Tim Tebow poster in my like cubicle. That was my Christianity. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like that's literally what it was.
Yeah.
And so now he has a girlfriend. It's so sad.
Oh, it's so sad. He listens to the podcast too. And so Tim Tebow just like, break up with her. Yeah. He's a huge fan. We have Fellowship Church right near us here, and I think he came recently and spoke there. Or maybe it wasn't recently. But anyways, he spoke there a few times.
That's fancy.
That's my only shout out.
Connection.
That's my only connection to
really
my own.
On this would change that for me.
Yeah, right.
But so it was a very very, very shallow Christianity. I mean, when I was growing up, we went on mission trips. I went to a camps, like mission trips around the country. And honestly, I went because I thought it was important, but I went because there were cute boys going on the trip. Like if I were really honest about it, that's where I went. Yeah. And so it wasn't really real to me until I had to really be faced with some challenging things that I was going through in my work and my personal life, and my health. And I was just like, I don't know if you're real, God. And so now I would say that God is very 3D to me, and I'm continually trying to make Him more tangible part of my life. Yeah. And I want Him to be inserted into every area of my life. Yeah. And I don't want Him just to be sitting there on Sunday morning in this little box. Yeah. I want Him to be kind of splattered all over everything. So
that's awesome. So maybe real quick, if there's someone who feels trapped by their job, or maybe feels like they're in a similar situation to you, they're trapped by their job, they feel stale, maybe they feel this like longing, and then they're just like, man, this job is killing me, why am I doing this? I actually have a little bit of a similar story in that I went to school just to get I wanted to be rich, and I wanted people to think I was smart. And so that was the only reason I was there, and I was just miserable. I was just miserable, and it really was my faith that helped me make that turn. Yeah. But if someone's listening right now, that's like, man, that's me, like in my job, like what words of encouragement or advice would you give someone?
I would say that success doesn't look one specific way. Success changes over time and what that looks like to you. And I would say if you're looking to get out and be like, okay, this isn't the type of success I really think that's going to fulfill me, because it's not right now. That was me. I mean, I was working in banking, which was like the prize jewel of the Wall Street jobs. And I was miserable. I was making money, but I was miserable, and I was not a great person and I was drunk half the time. Like, I mean, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you're looking to get out of that, my first step is to just start telling people that you're looking to go elsewhere. And so it's just having the conversations. And that's what really started spurring for me.
Yeah.
I was working, I didn't have a lot of time. I didn't have any time to research companies. So it is truly God's grace that I got plucked out of that position and somebody somewhere else.
Yeah.
But what I would recommend for people is just to start telling people. There's like 4 levels of networking that I tell people that they have. Their friends and family are part of their professional network, even though you might not realize it. They might know someone who might know someone who might know someone who has a position available.
Yeah.
The second is current and past colleagues. So you might not feel comfortable talking to current colleagues, but past colleagues potentially would have pivoted into something similar. It might be at a similar type of company. So that's a great avenue to go down. The third level would be your alma mater. So anywhere that you went to school, they still have to serve you. You paid them a lot of money to go there.
Oh, heck yes.
You can reach out to their career services center, ask them to see if do they have any alumni events? Is there anything like that? Also, LinkedIn, great resource for that.
Yeah.
Because you can actually go to your school's website, click on the button that says see alumni, and you can actually filter for like companies, locations, like levels. I mean, it's super, super. That's why I love LinkedIn, because you can literally get in contact with anybody in the world.
Yeah.
And the last level is just cold emailing people. And so that's kind of like the 4 levels that I tell. Just start talking to people is the main thing.
Yeah. So on the one hand, people, if a person of faith feels really trapped and kind of drained and stale in their career, what about on the other hand? Sometimes, I mean, I went to a Christian university, Catholic university, and sometimes I find that they experience such a Christian environment that then they're kind of like these delicate butterflies who they go out into the world and they can't handle that not everyone likes Christians, or they can't handle that. Like not everyone wants to talk about the faith. And so on the other extreme, how, what would you say to encourage someone to not despair and give up when their job, when they're surrounded by people at their job that don't have the same ideas or morals or whatever. Yeah. To not be afraid to be in that environment,
Yeah, it's hard. I think you have to have your people. I call them your board of directors.
Oh,
so
wow,
very business term.
Yeah, that's so great. That's so great.
You have your board of directors who are your friends, your tribe, and whoever. Like I have my board of directors, some people that are here in Nashville. So I moved from New York City. I live in Nashville, Tennessee now.
Okay.
And I have some people on my board here. But most of my board members are from my New York time that are spread all over across the country. And so even if you're not physically with them, being able to talk to those people about what you're going through, to not lose your faith in that, it's super easy to do.
Yeah.
It is super easy to do when you're spending the majority of your time around people that are like fueling the negative things maybe about Christianity or maybe not positive really relating to it, or you can't relate to anything with them. When I worked at the startup, it was a great company. It was a great environment, but I didn't agree with a lot of the things that the people kind of promoted or whatnot. Whether for lots of different reasons, and I won't even get into it. But I still loved them.
Yeah.
I still was there and I still showed up, and that was my job, to be the witness there. And I wasn't going to tell them they were wrong. I wasn't going to tell them that like they need to learn this, but I was just sharing my life. And if they wanted to engage, I would be there to engage with them. And so. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Exactly. Like, I think people should discern and ask the Lord if they're supposed to be somewhere. I don't think people should stay in a toxic environment, but sometimes God sends you somewhere because you might be the only Christian in that company. Just like you were saying, like you're made for Monday. Well, I guess someone else said that, but you're made for Monday. So that might be the place that you're being sent to just be there and not Bible beat everyone, but just be like, oh man, this person, seems to be pretty happy, and they don't do the things that we do, like that. Yeah. Like I want to be friends with them and ask them what the deal is,
Yeah. And I think too, like if looking back on my experience in banking, I would have approached it completely differently, knowing what I know now about the Lord and just kind of how he works. And that was what my career has always been the place that God has, saved me, rescued me, and renewed me. Yeah. And in every stretch of my career.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I just want to be very aware of that. And I think if more people actually thought like, oh, how is God moving in my career? How is he moving me in this place? Where am I supposed to be a witness to somebody? Where am I supposed to just show up and invite them over to my house? Yeah. Even if they know I disagree with them completely on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
that I would extend and offer and be there. That's really what I think we're called to do.
That's perfect. Okay, so real quick, I know you have limited time, but I want to get into maybe some practicals. Let's talk about interviews. Do you want to talk about interviews? Is that okay?
Oh, I love it.
So what is like
interviews are my favorite.
Me too. Me too. I actually really love interviews.
We're extroverts. That's probably why.
Well, but also, I mean, I was interviewing in a market that's like much smaller and much weirder, right? Like it's like Catholic churches that are interviewing for youth ministry positions, right? So it's like,
yeah.
It's like a lot of old women, a lot of old priests, and like, you know, so it was very different. But, you know, and I have a friend who just like, I mean, he's a mechanical engineer, and his interview process with these big companies was just like brutal, right? And like, so anyways, what are a few things, you know, someone who's maybe in 2019 going to be going into some interviews, what are like a few things that have the biggest bang for their buck? You know, like the whole like 20% effort giving this like 80% return. Just a few little things that you would recommend off the bat.
Yeah, I love acronyms. So I use these with my clients, but I usually tell folks that you need to make sure that you are telling a story, that you give it structure, that you're speaking in a soundbite. Those three things.
So story, structure,
and in a soundbite.
So is this the structure and soundbite of the story?
Yeah. So like, for instance, if someone's asking you the question, tell me about yourself. A lot of people go, well, I started off my career here and then I went, and then they do this like little, you know, swirly thing. And you're like, wait, what were they saying again?
I was born a poor black child in 19.
Just like, what are you talking about? So I always tell people, specifically even for that question, perfect example. So tell me about yourself. First, talk about what you're doing right now. Tell a brief little story about that. Yeah. Then tell a little bit about how you got there. Yeah. Then you talk about what you're excited about for the future, ultimately always revolving it back on the company. Yeah. So that's the structure, the story's in there, and you're not speaking for 20 minutes. Yeah. So speaking even as I'm talking to you, I'm speaking in sound bites, I'm giving it structure. Yeah. And so that makes the listener easier. They can understand it more and they understand what value you bring. That is the ultimate thing that you need to be conveying throughout the entirety of the interview. What is the value that you can bring? It's not about you. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not. Yeah. It's really about the company.
100%.
And what you can provide to them. And so a lot of people will go into it like, what can I tell them about me? I can do the tasks. Yeah, they care about you doing the tasks, but ultimately they want you to help them achieve their goals. Yes. And it looks like in three ways. It's either you're going to make them more money, you're going to save them money, or you're going to make someone's life easier. Yes. And it's usually a combination of one of those three. Yes. Yes. So if you can distill it down for them of like, hey, I'm the right person for this job because you are going to need someone who can do bam, bam, bam. Let me explain to you a little bit about how I've done that in the past. Yes, yes. It's not rocket science, and we usually try to make it a lot more complicated. It's really just, and it's not arrogance either. I call it like confidence. Yeah, yeah. Confidence is not arrogance. Yeah. And being able to quickly articulate that is the most important thing that you should be able to do. Yeah, 100%. Like I think this is important, not just for like interviews, but if you're listening and you're trying to make something online, if you're trying to do anything, a lot of times I'll even tell some of my coworkers, like the youth ministers that work under me now and stuff like that. I'm like, people are selfish. You know, like no one cares about you. And so like, for instance, if you're writing a blog article and it says why I changed my mind about X, it's like, no one cares. I mean, like we care, I care, but it's much better to say why you should change your mind about X or how I will help you X or how you can change X. I think that's so important. And people go into interviews just like you said, just thinking about here's why you should like me, as opposed to like, I know a lot about your company and I want to help you do X, Y, Z. Yeah, it's totally flipping flipping it on its head. And I tell people, read the job description 25 times. Yeah. That seems excessive, but you might have even glazed over it. You went straight to the requirements section, saw if you could actually fulfill it, and that's all you did. Yeah. When really, before you even get there, you need to understand, like, take a glance, be like, okay, is this person requiring 10 years? I only have 5. Like, that's probably not okay. Yeah. But if it's like, okay, Jen, I'm in the realm. Let me understand, like, what's the purpose of, what's the main idea of this role? Mm-hmm. The first question. Second question is like, what's the return on investment this employer is expecting to receive out of me? Yeah. Why are they hiring for this role? How does this fit over to the overall structure of the organization? Those are the questions you should ask before you even get to, okay, now how do I fit into it? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I used to go over the top when I would go to these interviews, and I would research so much. Like, I would memorize people on the staff's names. I would look up financial reports. Like, I would go so over the top, because none of the other people that went for the interviews would do that. They would differentiate them. Like, I was trying to differentiate myself as I would even sometimes write up a proposal of what I would do in the first year of ministry. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what and like hand it to them. Here's like my kind of my plan, based on you approving what you would want, but based on what I see here's what I'm going to do in the first year. If you hire me, like, let's get started kind of stuff.
And people complain that the job process is hard. It's really not. I mean, it is. It can be frustrating. I don't want to desensitize it. I think it's a great phrase.
Sure.
But I think it's right. Yeah. But I think it really comes down to is we live in an instant gratification nation. Yeah. And so because of that, we don't want to put the work in.
Yeah.
It's just the reality is, like, I will have people that will come, ask me for advice, and I'll kind of give them I'm not going to do that for every single one. Well, do you want the job?
Exactly.
I mean, sorry. Like, that's what you got to do.
Yeah. You differentiate yourself.
That's the biggest thing, is you have to differentiate yourself, because there are thousands of people now applying for the same job, where before it was like you opened up a newspaper, you circled it, and you hope that you might have gone straight to the place, right? We have whole wide web, which makes it great to find new jobs, but it also makes it very challenging because everybody's doing the same thing. So the whole thing can be very frustrating.
So what's the biggest mistake that most people don't catch that they're doing? I'm because you're coaching a lot of people, so I'm sure you are seeing, like, I'm sure people that have interviewed for jobs and hired people, they have that experience of seeing lots of people do interviews. But if you've never had to sit in on an interview, you're not exactly sure. There might be this one thing that you never even thought that you were doing wrong, or that someone does wrong. But from an employer standpoint, it's like, oh man, this is big mistake.
Yeah. Are we talking about interviewing, or are we just talking about the process in general? Because I got a thought on the process in general.
Okay, go with that.
So people spend way too much time on their resumes.
Okay, yeah.
And they spend their time tweaking it and thinking that's the like golden key to solve all problems. It's not.
Yeah.
It's definitely not. And it is a tool in the toolbox, along with your LinkedIn, your cover letter, the way you network, all those different pieces. But people put like 90% of their effort into like, is this optimized enough?
Yeah.
You know what? I never got a job from applying online.
Yeah.
So I never worried if my resume was optimized enough.
Yeah.
I cared about, is it going to showcase results? Is it going to showcase what I care about? Is it going to get me in the door? Because that's really all that it's going to do.
Yeah.
It's only going to get you in the door, and no one's going to look at it after that. They look at it for 6 seconds. So don't spend all your time on that.
Yep. Because I've
spend your time building your personal brand.
Yeah. Because I've had to hire people, and I get so frustrated by the resumes. I'm like, I'm not going to read your 2-page story about your time in Africa because I just can't. I have to go through these. And try to find someone that I want to have a Skype call with,
Yeah,
so that's a really good one. What about in the interview, especially college kids that are like really nervous about going into those interviews? What's something that most, let's say college kids, or even any age, but that's, I don't know why. That's probably just because I've been a youth minister. But people who are going into the interviews that are nervous, who have not done a lot of interviewing, what's something that most people do that they wouldn't think is a mistake?
One thing which people might realize it's a mistake, but don't come to your interview way too early. So don't come late, obviously.
Yeah.
But don't come way too early, because that's really stressful for the people that are sitting there waiting for you're just waiting there for, if you come like 10, 15 minutes early.
Perfect.
Anything longer than that, you're becoming a burden on them.
Yeah.
Because they have to host you, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
They might have other candidates coming in. So 10 to 15 minutes is the appropriate amount of time. If you get there early, go to a coffee shop down the street. Just chill in your car, whatever it looks like. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, at the end of an interview, always make sure you have questions. Don't have 20 questions to ask them. Have something maybe you listened to that they were talking about in the interview that seemed important to them. Just make sure you have thoughtful questions that are going to make sure that you are interested in them as a person, because they are people. Yeah. 2, that you have some sort of knowledge of the industry, that you can talk the talk.
Yeah.
Whether you're a college student or not, if you have an idea, like, oh, I saw that you guys announced on your that you are acquiring this XYZ company. Like, how's that going to affect our team?
Yeah.
Like, it's a great question. If just look to see like what was the news about them, and then talk about it.
Yeah.
Ask how it's going to affect the business, if at all. Is it going to affect our department? And then always asking a question that's related to culture and kind of the reminder that you are also interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So you can ask questions like, I always tell people it's never what you say, it's how you say it.
Yep.
So you could say, hey, you have really negative Glassdoor reviews. What's up with that? Or you could say, hey, I really don't mean to put a salt in a wound, but I noticed when I was doing my research that on Glassdoor, there was a commonality of like people were saying that this thing was going on. Can you talk about that at all if you feel comfortable? If not, totally understand.
Yeah. And that's
all about the context.
Yes. And that's such a good point too, maybe to close out, but that you are interviewing them. Like that is such a good mind. I don't know why. I don't know if this is right, but when I would go into the interviews, I would always go in with this like psyched up mentality of like, they need to convince me to work here. Like like I'm going to ask them questions and they need to convince me that I should work here, you know?
I tell all my clients that they need to make sure that they are coming in as a leader. So they almost need to tell the employer, well, based off of your job description, you're going to need someone that can do X, Y, Z. Would love to share a little bit about how I've done that in the past or how I would do it in the future.
Yeah, that's great.
So you're leading with a leadership mentality.
Yeah. But
you aren't coming across as arrogant.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, Jena, this has been so fun. This has been like a tight episode and really great. I know you have to go, but this was really, really good. I'm like glad you're out there doing this stuff. I'm glad.
Thanks for inviting me. This was really fun to talk about all the things I love.
Yeah,
personal branding, interview prep, and all the faith and work stuff. So
yeah, anytime you want to come back on, feel free. Our guest list is so long, but we'll try to squeeze you back in. Do you have anything you want to promote or places that the plug where people want to check you out or what this is the part of the show where you just plug stuff.
So if you want to connect with me, there's two main ways. So one, I would say get on LinkedIn and connect with me there. This is my way of hijacking you and making sure you get on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And two, on Instagram. So my handle is just my first name and last name. So JenaViviano. And I'm sure we'll have that somewhere in some show notes.
Yeah, I'll have all the links.
And then I also launched a Word at Work devotional. So it's designed to get you out of your inbox in the middle of the day and get your hands in your Bible. And so it's a quick 15-minute midday devotional.
Dadgum, girl. That's awesome.
I'm super pumped.
That is great. Is it print or is it electronic or what is it?
It's a PDF right now, but we're going to be going to print hopefully by end of year.
That's awesome. Are you going to self-publish Amazon? Or like Kindle? Yeah, that's the way to go. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Jena, for coming on. What else? I had something else I was going to say. People should go follow Jena. If you need career consulting or advice or you suck at interviews, contact Jena. She's going to help you out. Oh, I don't think we got any. Hold on 1 second. I don't think we got any resumes or anything. Well, you got to go anyways. Well, anyways, thanks for coming on. Stay for a second after. I'm just going to stop the recording, but thanks for being on here, Jena.
Thanks so much for having me.